Professor Fulda, Professor Felbermayr, dear friends. First, thank you. I have been awarded with the Kiel World Economic Prize 2020. I'm honored and I'm grateful. I have also been asked to deliver a seminar or a contribution to a seminar about macroeconomy and climate change. I do that gladly because it is in the core of my activity since more than 50 years. I have been active dealing with politics, economy, and environmental dimensions. So let's reflect upon the theme. First, I start with the economy. My experience as a former Prime Minister and Minister of Finance is that if you don't have the economy in order, you will lose all your strength. We have seen so many talking about programs and projects, promising what to do, but never being able to deliver. Because if you are indebted, you are not free. Then others in the end will decide what you can do and will do. So for me it has always been extremely important to underline the need for sound public finances. I once started as Minister of Finance with a record high deficit, 12-13% of GDP. It was in the mid-90s. We had a prognosed debt of 120% of GDP. And we have a difference to the German bonds of 450 basis points. And we had a high unemployment and low real wage increases, if none at all. It was an economy in a deep crisis. That was my task as newly elected Minister of Finance to deal with. And to be honest, it was not so difficult to realize what to do. The difficult thing was to do it. So many before me have hesitated to take action because it was painful. But sometimes as a leader, you have to take action. You have to do the difficult things. You have to put your own position at stake. And I did so. And we managed to turn it around quite quickly. And when I left politics in Sweden, we had a surplus in public finances and an extremely low debt. That has given us a freedom to act, a freedom to invest, and a freedom to take initiative. So politics is always in the end about being able to deliver what you promise. To promise and to discuss, that is always a very pleasant activity. But if it ends there, it will also bring an opinion about politics that politicians just talk, never deliver. And I also used to say, if you are aiming for being re-elected, you need to deliver. And remember one thing, being elected, almost everyone can be. If you look around the world, you see a lot of strange persons being elected to different positions. But being re-elected, there you have the art of politics. And to be re-elected, you have to deliver on your promises. You have to do something. The difficult thing is not to realize what to do. The difficult thing is to do it. This was my starting point. And I understood that this is nothing that can stand alone. It must be linked to a political project. Once we built in Sweden the welfare state, there everyone should be on board with good and equal conditions, and we should finance it together. That project is still underway, so to say. It's eternal. But I wanted to add something to that welfare state project, and that was a green dimension. Because my opinion has been for long that the environmental threat is something that will undermine the economic conditions and in the end bring also problems to the welfare state. If the economy starts slowing down because of environmental reasons, you will in the end also have a growing problem with unemployment and the welfare arrangements. So therefore, addressing the environmental dimension was to stick to the traditional policy and program, building the welfare state, but with a green dimension. Then, of course, being honest, telling the electorate that the legislations we have today, they are too weak, they need to be sharper, and they need to be more focused. Go for a whole reform of the legislation. Then tell also something we are doing today is harmful. We need to stop it. If you don't accept that we forbid it, then you will be in a position that you pay higher taxes for polluting and so on. Or we need to stop using carbon. We need to stop using activities that create carbon dioxide. We need to get rid of fossil fuel. We need to develop the alternatives. Therefore, a tax on carbon. Or we need to have a more secure supply of energy. We need to realize that our dependence in Sweden upon the nuclear power was too heavy. We needed to reduce it. So therefore we closed a nuclear plant, one of the first that were closed, so to say, in an open democratic process. Not for free, to be honest. It was expensive, but I was glad that I did it because it was situated, located, so you could see it from the capital of Copenhagen on the other side of Öresund, at a place named Barsebäck. We did this and a lot of other things that had a macroeconomic perspective. And it was not loved, to be honest. It was controversial. It was questioned, not least by the business society, who from time to time looked upon this program with a huge skeptical attitude. But we did it, and we delivered, and it worked. Was it enough? Of course not. Were we early? Yes. Did we everything right? Definitely not. But as always, when you are dealing with different forms of development, you need to start somewhere, and you need to accept that something don't end up in the way that you expected. So we did mistakes, but generally it was accepted and it went in the right way. So this green dimension, together with structural reforms regarding the wage formation process, regarding the pension system, regarding the whole way of handling with the state budget, all that together gave a stimulus for Swedish economic growth for many, many years. And since then, we have had an unbroken era of growth and also real wage increases for ordinary workers. And that has been extremely important. Low salaries increases, but they have been real. And those 2-3% annually has been extremely valuable if you look upon it from the 20-year perspective. This is my background. Together with that, I have spent a lot of time in local politics, in regional politics, in the European Union, in international organizations like United Nations. I have been, so to say, on all levels in politics, but I constantly come back to the easy and very easy understood message. If you want to achieve something, you want to deliver, you want to do it, not only talk about it. If I had 30 years ago or 20 years ago a resistance from the business society, today I must say it is the opposite. Today the business society has taken the lead, and you meet a lot of business leaders in Sweden who have this badge on their jacket, the UN Millennium Goals about how to handle the planet. It's a new attitude, and they realize one thing. It's also good business and necessary economic activities to invest in the green dimension. Today I have the honor being chairman of the board of LKAB. That is a mining company producing iron ore far up in north in Sweden, in the Arctic part of Sweden. We produce 80% of the European iron ore in those mines, and I am chairman of that company. 2,000 meters down under the earth, so to say, down in earth, we are taking our iron ore. Now we are going from 1,365 meters down to 2,000 meters. It's a giant industrial project. At the same time, we are developing the iron ore treatment so we can deliver iron sponge, and that is a raw material that will be used by the steel plant, so the steel will not contain any carbon dioxide in the future because of our delivery of iron sponge. If we succeed in this program, and we are convinced that we will do, we will reduce the carbon footprint with 35 million tons annually in Sweden and in countries who have steel plants who are using our iron sponge. If we do so, that is the same figure as 1/3 of the Swedish total carbon dioxide footprint. So the investments in the iron ore mines in the Arctic Sweden will bring down the carbon footprint with 35 million tons annually. It's not a small industrial project, it's gigantic. And at the same time, we will also see a new steel plant being constructed close to this mine. We will also see a new plant being constructed taking care of the real earth metals, those who are difficult to find in other places than China. And we will also see that this is possible to do thanks to a delivery of electricity that is green. And it is not small amounts of electricity we are talking about. We are talking about 50 terawatt hours. It is roughly the same consumption of electricity as the whole country of Denmark has annually. That will now be built in the Arctic part of Sweden, with the mines as driving forces for an industrial project that is gigantic. We think we will invest roughly about 50 billion euro, 50 billion euro, roughly. It can be a little bit more, it can be a little bit less. But realize which impact this will have on the total economy in the region. This will be a part of Sweden that will have a dramatic upturn in the economic growth. And the problems in the future will not be unemployment. The problems will be the opposite. How to find the workforce carrying this through, how to pay them, how to build the houses, how to construct the schools, how to go for a good society so we don't end up in a situation where we have to use aeroplanes to take the workforce in and out to our mines and to our construction activities in this part of Sweden. I have often said, and I'm convinced about that the next leap or the next huge stride in economic growth will be taken just because we are forced to make it ecologically sustainable. Here you have a good example, a very good example. 50 billion euro invested in creating something that not will deliver a carbon footprint. You have many examples of that kind. Huge investments will be decided around Europe and around the world the coming years. This is a driving force for economic growth. And not to forget, it's built upon research, development, scientific activities. It's built upon the best possible knowledge. So it also creates good spirals in that type of perspective. So what we have learned earlier about investments as driving forces for economic growth will be even more true in the future. And we have nothing that is more important to invest in than the industrial activities that are creating a carbon footprint. This is today one of my activities. If anyone had told me 30 years ago that the industry should end up in a situation where the green dimension would be a driving force for industrial development, I had doubted, perhaps. But the discussion climate at that time didn't send that signal, the opposite. The green dimension was at that time the death for industrial activities. Now it is the future and the birth of new industries, and it is a privilege to have the opportunity to take part in this. I'm also chairman of a bank, one of the big banks in Sweden, a bank with its root in the saving banks movement, a big bank, profitable, well-run. But I can see there as well, if I look upon the financial sector, that they are today focused upon sustainability. And those who want to invest their money, the first question they have today is this sustainable? Is this something that will last? Is this something that will give me a good reputation? Is this something that brings a more fair distribution? Because sustainability is not only about the green dimension, it's also about the social dimension and the economic growth dimension in a sound way. So when I see my bank today and listen to the bankers, I can hear the same argument as I met 20, 30 years ago from the green activists, but now it is, so to say, taken into account in the financial sector. And I'm also very active in a forest company where I can see that very, very much capital want to invest in forest land just because it is something that they regard will be a core activity to combat climate change in the future, and therefore profitable and interesting to invest in. So both the industry, as I see it from my position as chairman of LKAB, the mining company, and the financial sector, as I see it from my position as chairman of Swedbank, are heavily engaged in sustainable discussions and investments. So the political initiatives that were taken 30 years ago, they have now been, so to say, complete with an activity driven by the business society itself. It's a good development, and it's also understandable because green investments are profitable investments in many respects. Having said this, my most interesting activity today, even if this could be enough, so to say, is that I am also a farmer. Probably the only former prime minister in Europe who have ended up as a farmer. And not just by chance, I did it because I wanted. My wife and I, we bought a farm when I resigned. And since then we have built our own farming activities. It is forestry, of course. You must remember that Sweden is a forest, de facto, if you look upon it. So if you have a farm, you also have forest activities. It is also a meat production, beautiful big cows and their calves, keeping the landscape open, taking care of the wonderful places created via 500, 600, 700 years of agriculture activities. I now bring that further and take care of that responsibility. So meat production and forestry is my daily work, so to say. And there I have many opportunities to reflect upon the situation in the agriculture sector. I think that the agriculture sector perhaps is the most important one in Europe for combating climate change and securing good life. I don't need to remind you in Germany about extreme weather. You have seen it this summer. Is that just by coincidence, or is this something that we will have to live with? And if so is the case, will it be worse? Can we see even worse situations compared with the one we experienced this summer? If the answer is yes, in the end, how will we be able to produce our food? Who will do that? Can we be sure about the possibilities for that? Yes, I think so. But we need to develop the agriculture sector. First, for food security, yes, but also being an active partner in combating climate change. After all, most of our land is agriculture land, in many countries to a large degree, in other countries like Sweden to a smaller degree. But it's there, and it is European, it is global, everywhere. And it is threatened because of the climate change. Which measures do they undertake? I think the agriculture sector is in the corner. They are under pressure. The profitability is too low, and the attractiveness in the sector is also too low. We need to go for a period of new crops, new fertilizers, new equipment, new structures on the farms, a new generation farmers, women and men, and new capital coming into the sector to be able to meet the challenges and to be able to take our part of the responsibility. This is a sector that not must be delivered, so to say, the responsibility to the European Union. We all have a responsibility for this. This is a natural part of all European countries. We need to see to that we have a prospering agriculture sector in every country. This is a future reform area. The same goes for forestry. As I said before, Sweden is de facto a forest. If you look upon Sweden, next time you come by air, look down, and what you see are forests. The whole country. Small parts are not, but most of it, 75% of the land area are forests. We are living in a forest, and probably our forests will be our biggest contribution beside the industry to combat climate change. To use our forest actively to produce fibers that will replace fossil products. And don't forget, everything you can make in industry based upon fossil fuel, you can also make upon cellulose. So this is a tremendous challenge and chance. The traditional paper industry and the traditional sawmills, they will be challenged in the future because the raw material, the fibers from our forests are attractive also for other industries. If we let the development go ahead, if we let the development take new leaps forward. This is a tremendous chance, not least for all of us who are living on the countryside, if we focus upon agriculture and forestry. And no European country today can say that they have a good relation between the city's population and the agriculture, the rural population. There are tensions, there are conflicts, there are misunderstandings, there are an opinion about losers and winners. We need to cooperate, and we will never be able to use the agriculture sector or the forestry sector to combat climate change if we don't have anyone on the ground who are carrying out the practical work. Once more, the difficult thing is not to realize what to do, the difficult thing is to do it. All splendid research and development, all academic activities, if that will come to a reality, is also dependent upon those who are working practically in the agriculture and forestry sector. To build that alliance again is necessary. That is a future recipe of how we can combat climate change in Europe. We need the European Union to be supportive in this. We need the European Union in many respects, but this is a sector where we need them extra much. What have I told you? I have told you about a long journey in politics and business. The strange thing is, if you have the opportunity, as I have had, to be active for almost 60 years, following the development, having a chance to influence development, you can see the long perspective. And in the long run, we all have a common responsibility. If we end up in putting group against group, we always in the end will be losers, all of us. To cooperate, to build our action upon science, to be sound economic, to not diffuse things, but talk about it as they look and as they are, explain, and taking the bold initiatives. That is what it is about. And I'm extremely optimistic about the future. We can see the threats, of course. I could have discussed today the COVID experiences. I could have discussed the security policy architecture after Afghanistan. I could have discussed even more the climate change. But I focus upon what's happening just now and driving us in the right direction. We have well-educated workforces. We have a young population who are digital. And we have a world who are open for information and discussion. And we have economic resources for the sound investments. We have more capital than ever. So therefore, why wait? Take the initiative now. Start not only the discussion, but also the actions. Because in the end, also this seminar will be judged upon which type of actions we could inspire, which type of deliveries was an outcome of this speech and this intervention. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the prize.